Good morning, everyone. America's schools are in the final weeks before winter vacation, and boy, do they need a break. Many of them are still facing shortages of teachers and staff. Denver's school district, for example, recently shut down for a day to just kind of let everyone catch their breath. Janet Shamlin shows us how educators across the country are taking on multiple roles and feeling overwhelmed.
You do have some stuff on your desk. Go ahead and finish up.
You might find Gail Ortiz in the classroom, teaching third grade.
Awesome. You guys, great job.
Or on the playground supervising recess.
Let's line up, guys. So glad you're here.
But neither is her primary job at Barnum Elementary in Denver, where officially she heads the school.
Your title is principal, but what are you doing right now?
I am principal, assistant principal, teacher, paraprofessional. I cover classes, lunch recess duty. I do everything that needs to be done.
Denver is facing a critical shortage of teachers due to illness, anxiety over COVID, and those leaving the profession altogether.
What's the stress level like?
It's pretty high, even though our staff comes in with a smile, even though they do what they need to do. They're feeling it.
That's why the hallways went dark recently. Superintendent Alex Marrero closing the district's more than 200 campuses for an unprecedented mental health day.
Every teacher has become a social worker and guidance counselor. They weren't trained to do so, right? So everybody is now going well beyond the scope of mathematics or literacy, and they're asked to do a little bit more that they haven't received the training for.
Marrero says they used to have 1,200 substitutes to help. More than 800 quit during the pandemic.
It's not just here in Denver. Burnout is fueling shortages of teachers and staff, like bus drivers and cafeteria workers in schools all across the country.
A principal in Newark, New Jersey, is also the morning crossing guard.
Come on, guys.
And in Las Vegas, Principal Joseph Uwe, without janitors, vacuums classrooms and scrubs floors.
Last month, there hasn't been one day that I haven't had to ask my staff to fill in the gaps.
Some schools have gone back to remote learning or extended holiday vacations to manage.
You have a long way to go until May or whenever school is out.
And you know what's the scariest part? When you hear a teacher saying it feels like March. To have that type of fatigue early on in the fall, it's scary.
You guys did great. Did you mark with your red markers?
At Barnum Elementary, volunteers like Grace Signs keep the doors open.
I try to do once a week.
A helpful but temporary Band-Aid for a profession with much deeper wounds. I'm Janet Shamlin in Denver.
Reading to children is critical for their development. In fact, it is recommended that parents read aloud to their children every day, starting at birth. In the digital age, though, many parents may turn to technology, but as Bradley Blackburn explains, research shows actual books are better for young children.
He's ready for some fun.
Alice Liao is mom to 3 children under 4. She says story time is one of their favorite activities.
Each kiddo gets to pick a book, and we'll sit down on the couch and read the books before they officially go to bed.
And she says the family has found reading from a book is more fun than reading on a digital device.
We love it when books have like different textures. There are flaps for them to, kind of play with and uncover and see.
A new study in pediatrics compared the interactions of parents and children ages 2 to 3 when reading traditional books and tablet apps. Parents talked more to their children while reading a book, and children responded less to their parents using the tablet.
Those kind of back and forth interactions between a parent and a child are like brain food for kids. They build the foundations of children's language and social and emotional development that really span a lifetime.
Study author Dr. Tiffany Munzer is a developmental behavioral pediatrician at Michigan Medicine. She says with technology here to stay, parents should view digital media with their young children.
Finding ways to ask open-ended questions about the digital content so that it relates it back to the child's experiences. So asking, what do you see here on this?
Now what will he do?
Alice limits her children's screen time and says reading together is a bonding experience for everyone.
Cuddling them while we're reading these stories, it just makes me feel really connected to them.
She says with so many moments in the day interrupted by technology, it's nice for the family to curl up with a good book. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
And children who were prone to emotional outbursts also responded better to their parents when reading a traditional book compared with a device. All right, a holiday light display may have one California family in trouble. We'll show you next on Mid-Morning. All right, welcome back. A California homeowner decorates his house every year to look like the National Lampoon Christmas house. But now he's in trouble with the city, and everybody here is going, why? Nicole Comstock has this story. Take a look.
Reindeers here, reindeers here.
It takes a special kind of person.
There's 2 chimneys I decorated.
To pour so much love into an artistic project.
Yeah, I like that.
That it inspires people to learn more about what they're looking at.
Have you seen the movie?
No, but I want to watch it now.
This is Matias Chavez's first time visiting the elaborate labor of love that is the Griswold family Christmas house in La Mirada.
I think there's something not wired right in my head that would do something like this, but
Jeff Norton, the creative mind behind the masterpiece, has been very accurately recreating the home from the iconic 1989 Chevy Chase movie, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, for 4 years in a row. Why? Because the story really resonated with him.
Well, I'll tell you, so I lost my sister and my dad in the last 36 months. Has been horrible, but our family was this family. You know, my sister would come over completely unannounced, leave when she wanted.
And it really resonates with the hundreds of people who drive here each year to see it.
What do you like about the movies?
Oh, they're funny.
What's not so funny is how Jeff's Griswold family Christmas bubble was burst this year when he got an unexpected visit from the city.
We're gonna have a wonderful Christmas.
What the hell do you want?
Just 2 years ago, the city of La Mirada awarded Jeff the Holiday Home Decorating Contest winner for his display. But this year, they say the second story he added on was done without a permit, and they're worried it could hurt someone if it falls.
I feel like there's bigger things to worry about right now.
If Jeff doesn't take down the temporary second-story display, the city could fine him between $100 and $500 per week for a possible total of $1,200.
I don't believe that we need to be taking this down.
And Jeff says he won't take it down. Not this Christmas anyway. He says it's safely secured to the roof and doesn't pose a danger to anyone.
I don't want people to pay the fines. I'll pay them.
But some people have refused to leave the property without helping to pay for those fines.
My bonus.
For those who ask why he doesn't just take the second story down, well, he could, but...
Yeah, but it wouldn't be as good.
Reporting in La Mirada, Nicole Comstock, KCAL 9 News.
When we come back, a conversation with a basketball legend. Mid-morning, we'll be right back. All right, we're back. NBA legend Bill Russell is getting ready to auction off valuable pieces of memorabilia later this month, including championship rings, most valuable player trophies, and game-worn jerseys. In a rare television interview, he reflects on his life, his career, and the obstacles he was forced to overcome.
Basketball hadn't seen anything like Bill Russell before. Built like a skyscraper at 6'10". When Russell jumped, Russell soared. The kid from Monroe, Louisiana, who nobody wanted on their team because of the color of his skin. He redefined what the sport could be and eventually ended up being the teammate no one could play without.
Bill, this must have been a great win for you.
Exactly. Russell catapulted the Celtics and the city of Boston skyward in the 1950s and 60s. Winning titles and breaking barriers at a time when keeping your dignity as a black man in America was easier said than done.
So we're sitting here in Boston at the Garden. You helped bring glory here, 11 championships here. What does it feel like to be here on this court?
I never was comfortable playing for the Celtics because the #1 paper was the Boston Herald. And they didn't like the idea of the NBA team having black players.
You brought championships here in a time when it was hard to be a black man. Was it difficult to be celebrated on the court, but then off of it, not treated equal?
First of all, was never separated on the court. When I got there, the star was Bob Cousy.
Watch Boston's Bob Cousy.
No matter what I did, Cousy was a star.
Bill Russell, another Celtic, taps it in.
I remember I had a game where I had 25 points, 25 rebounds, 10 blocks, and they Boston Herald said I was lucky I got to play with Cousy.
Was it tough to play in this city? Was it easy to win over the fans?
I never bothered with them fans because when I was a star, the fans called them the Boston Globies.
Like the Boston Globetrotters?
Yeah.
Because you guys had black players?
Yeah.
I'm not a basketball player. I am a man who plays basketball. Bill Russell, the man, is someone who stood up for the rights and dignity of all men.
Bill Russell wasn't just an icon for basketball fans to rally behind on the floor of the Boston Garden on any given night.
9 top Negro athletes meet with Cassius Clay.
He was an icon for Black America, using his profile to highlight racism and inequality. Here with Muhammad Ali and other top black athletes in 1967, backing Ali's decision refusing the Vietnam War draft. At the march alongside Dr. King in Washington, all while resetting the standard of what was possible.
The Boston Celtics were the first team to start 5 black players, and I believe they got some backlash for that. And Auerbach said, we just put the guys on the court that were going to help us win. And that's how he looked at basketball.
Well, see, Auerbach had a problem in Boston that was overwhelmingly anti-black. They considered Auerbach a traitor.
Because he coached black players?
Yeah. See, we were the first team to start 5 black players.
Do you remember in Kentucky where you and your teammates set out because they refused service at a restaurant?
Yeah.
At that time, why did you feel like it was important to do that?
Well, things are part of our preparations for the game. The team would have dinner together, and I had a couple of teammates from Kentucky, and they were going to have a separate pregame meal. So I told the coach, I'm not going to play tonight. He said, why not? I said, because of that.
Later that month, this letter found its way to Russell's mailbox. It was from Jackie Robinson, who broke Major League Baseball's color barrier more than a decade earlier, thanking Russell for boycotting the game in Kentucky.
Jackie was much more to him than most people knew. They just knew he was the first black player in the major leagues. Jackie would not take anything off anybody.
That's right.
And so we were going to play the Knicks, and he says, I want to tell you guys how proud I am of you. Jackie was not tough, but he's probably the smartest guy to ever play baseball.
I tried to get as many as him. I couldn't get there.
Which championship was the most special to you? Was it the first one, or was it the last one?
The first year I was player coach and we won the championship.
First black coach in the NBA, is that right?
Yeah.
And you won as a player and a coach?
Yeah. Well, you gotta understand something. My motivation was to make myself acceptable to my folks. I never felt like I was making a contribution. I was just doing the best I could.
Coming up next, the enduring influence of Lucille Ball. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's a love affair that began on October 15th, 1951, and 7 decades, her legend continues to grow. Jim Axelrod went to find out why we still love Lucy.
The 180 episodes over 6 seasons on CBS followed the madcap adventures of Lucy Ricardo and the trouble she whips up trying to break out of her mid-century middle-class life. Married to Cuban bandleader Ricky Ricardo, played by her real-life husband, Desi Arnaz.
Yes, I love Lucy, and Lucy loves me.
Nowhere is the hold the show still has on the public easier to see than in Jamestown, New York, where Lucille Ball was born 110 years ago, and where 2 museums celebrate I Love Lucy, featuring replicas of the show's iconic sets.
All I think about is the amount of extraordinarily well-done physical comedy that took place here.
This is so evocative.
Journey Gunderson is the executive director of both the Lucy Desi Museum and the National Comedy Center.
70 years later, why is Lucille Ball still relevant?
I think in some ways, Lucille Ball's legacy can be appreciated now through a 2021 lens perhaps better than it ever has been able to be appreciated.
Start with I Love Lucy's enormous popularity.
Ricky, this is it.
This is
The episode in which Lucy gave birth on January 19, 1953, reached 44 million viewers.
That I will faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States.
That's 15 million more than the next day when Dwight Eisenhower was sworn in as our 34th president. Lucy and Desi marked new territory for television, still evolving as a cultural institution. She was the all-American girl. He was a Cuban-born transplant. For its time, controversial casting that Lucille Ball insisted on.
She risked everything.
Remember, this was more than a decade before the height of the civil rights movement.
I think America raised its eyebrows, but then they quickly started laughing.
Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz were TV pioneers in an impressive list of other ways as well. The laughter was so loud when they filmed, it was recorded and used for other shows, helping to launch canned laughter as a standard production technique. That show where she gave birth capped TV's first ever pregnancy plotline on a Big 3 network sitcom.
It was still taboo for a woman who was pregnant to be out in the open in front of everyone.
And when Lucy needed some time off post-delivery, Desi offered up a first that changed the Hollywood business model forever. Just repeat some episodes that had already aired.
Desi Arnaz, father of reruns?
Yes, and the story goes that CBS executives laughed at him and said, who's going to want to watch them after they aired?
It turned out everyone would, which is why 70 years later, Lucille and Desi are still cultural icons.
I care about what's funny.
The subject of that new Aaron Sorkin movie being The Ricardos with Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem.
No.
And a novel, The Queen of Tuesday by Darren Strauss.
She was famous to a degree that hadn't existed before her, really.
While intrigued by her immense public appeal.
When they'd cut to commercial, the water tables would drop in the big cities because the entire country was going to the bathroom at the same time.
Strauss found her private pain most compelling.
Look at this face, though.
Yeah.
That's not acting.
Yeah, that's great, right? She and Desi were perfect together except for the fact that they weren't. She loved him, he loved her, and yet they couldn't live together.
On camera, Desi was an understanding, loving husband. Off camera, he was an alcoholic and a womanizer.
She knew she couldn't divorce him because that would let the country down. That's how powerful that bond was for us. It was like a civic bond.
In his novel, Strauss gives Lucy love in the form of an affair with his own grandfather.
And I wanted to give her a love story of her own. That's why I told the story in this way.
But that's fiction. The fact, Lucy and Desi did eventually divorce. Both remarried. But most poignantly,
if we asked her at the end of her life, who was the love of your life?
Desi Arnaz, absolutely.
At the root, they were connected by their souls. Yeah.
Kate Luckenbill agrees, and she should know.
We had a very special bond.
She's their granddaughter.
Your grandparents did remain in love till the end of their lives?
Uh-huh. Completely. Madly. Deeply.
Now the head of creative direction at Desilu, the studio founded by her grandparents. That's right. Years after I Love Lucy, Lucille Ball greenlit shows like Star Trek, The Untouchables, and The Twilight Zone. The keeper of the I Love Lucy flame.
There's a healing quality to that show. That's what I feel I'm here to do, is to remind people of the elixir that they brought the world.
Luckenbill is protective of the memory of her grandfather, who died in 1986 at the age of 69, and her grandmother, who died 3 years later from an aortic aneurysm at 77. But she also wants to look at them honestly.
Better we allow the illusion to move aside and let's deal with the reality.
Yeah. And why it's so important not to let people like that die in their 70s from a heart explosion and alcoholism. Because neither of them should have been gone. They died of sadness and trauma, both of them.
No Hollywood ending, perhaps, but what Lucy and Desi did give the world still has an extraordinary impact 70 years later.
That was like the first time I got to see a female being funny and silly and embarrassing, and it was cool.
Just ask this young artist.
I feel like when I was really little, there was this idea that you have to be polite and quiet as a woman. And when I watched her show, that was the first introduction of you don't have to be quiet. You could be funny, you could be loud, and it was okay.
And guess what? America's gonna love it.
Right, and they're gonna love it so much, we're gonna be on for decades. And people in my generation, the next generation, and the next generation are gonna know.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back to wrap things up. All right, be sure you stay connected with us. We love hearing from you. We'll see you back here tomorrow.